Molt bé, doncs crec que estem a l'aire ja.
I think that we are on air. We are going live, and welcome everyone
Aquest tercer
this third green
moment de
dialogue,
trobada per
third meeting moment to speak, exchange opinions in this final meeting of the year 2020. And here we wanted to pose a topic which is one of the most popular topics that has to do with the European recuperation funds, not only generically speaking, in order to know where are they leading us to, but trying to find a different political dimension, a certain position, a certain set of considerations to see where should these social funds be addressed to, what is our vision about the fate of these social funds in Europe, but in particular in Spain and Catalonia more particularly, to take our European projects towards our own reality and to see what is the model change. It's like a mantra that we need to know more about. We have to describe this model change. This is the goal of our topic.
Pel canal de YouTube de la Fundació I també pel canal de Zoom. En el cas del canal de Zoom,
this Zoom channel that you know all about, you can follow
tant en versió original,
the meeting in original, because we have
que no parlarà català,
a German guest who will be speaking not German but in English. You can listen to the Catalan version as well. And I will introduce the people that will participate here. Susan Henrike will be making the presentation about the Green European Foundation. We are partner of the Green European Foundation. Susan is the co-chair of this foundation, this group. Secondly, would like to thank Henrike Hahn, a German person with a Catalan accent. I said it, I pronounced her name. She is a Euro MP. She represents the Greens in the European Parliament, and she works in the sphere of the industry, commerce, and research and energy. It's good to hear her opinion to determine what has been said, what has been done so far. Thank you so much. We will also have Javier Pacheco, Secretary General of Comisiones Obreras in Catalonia. And he is one of the aspects that has more interest to see how these recuperation funds are treated socially and economically from and finally, Laura Campos, she is the mayor of Montcada Reixac. She can give us a good opinion about the practical implementation of our everyday situation, how this is implemented practically. Sometimes this is very generic, very global, and we are actually speaking about transforming projects, turning projects into something that impacts the life of citizens. And she can give us a good overview on how in Montcada and in her municipality in particular, things are done when speaking about these European recovery funds. So this will be the first round of presentations, 10 minutes each approximately, and we may have questions you can ask in the chat, for example, and we will convey these questions to our speakers. With no further ado, we'd like to give the floor to Susan Henrike. Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone, or nearly evening. I'm very happy to be here with all of you in our last event that we are doing in the year 2020 together with News No Horizons. This year has been very complex for everyone. But I also reckon that we have undertaken several actions altogether that have had an effect on how to proceed in Europe, how to find a way out to this complex situation that we are living currently. I'm very happy to say that this is a part of our projects that we organize all together, Jeff, with the national foundations. And this is a cooperation we do all together with Nose Hoodie Jones Foundation. And mainly, this is a format that speaks about green issues, green topics in combination with local aspects. They are the key, they go hand by hand. And it's very important to develop it all. I'm very happy to see that we also have, not because I am the German in Catalonia for the Catalan Foundation, but I am also happy to see that Henrike is also here, because I believe that a collaboration between Germany and Catalonia and Spain will be key next year. And for the Green European Foundation, Spain is one of the key countries where we have been working so that the green wave reaches Spain, and we can incorporate a greener policy both in Europe as well as in Spain and Catalonia. Other than the collaborations between Jeff and the national projects, we also do transnational projects where more countries take part. Catalonia and New Horizon has been collaborating in these aspects, tourism and hope and green cities. And we are also developing something that I believe we need not only this year, we will need it next year, a debate on how to develop our Europe and our world with a more sustainable future and a greener future for our children, a more pleasant future, I would say. For those of you who do not know what to do with their time during vacation, Christmas time, I'd like to invite you to visit our website, the Jeff website, because on this topic that we are speaking about today and that we will continue speaking about next year, you will find articles that are really worth reading for those of you who can read in English and also in Spanish, and some of them even in Catalan. Well, let me now give the floor to the first speaker, because we have, well, three very interesting speakers. It'll be a very interesting debate, and let's go on with our work. And I hope that you enjoy a very interesting discussion, because I believe that those of us who are here have not won the lottery. So otherwise, we probably wouldn't be here. Today's lottery day in Spain. Well, let me give the floor to the next speaker. Thank you, Mark, and thank you to the rest of you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much for the kind invitation and your kind words, dear Mark, and to Susanna. I'm really happy to be with you. Greetings from Munich, where I'm currently am. And last week I was still in Brussels, but now close to Christmas, we have the chance to work where we live in general. So I'm very happy that we talk about the Green and Social European Recovery Fund today, because that's really something that kept us busy, the Greens and all the parliamentarians recently. And of course, we all know we are in the second wave of COVID right now, and many countries are shutting down again. And despite the development of vaccines, we might face a long and difficult way to return to economic pre-crisis levels. But of course, we're doing our best, and we have so many tools to handle that situation in the moment, and we really have to use it. And so we have a lot of chances we can also grab here. So actually, we think it's not enough to just get back to where we have been before. We can do things, we can make things even better than ever before. And we want to use this crisis to make our economy greener, more resilient, and more inclusive, of course. And before the COVID crisis, the Commission proposed the Green Deal, but also the Greens, of course, we always had it in mind. That was our project and our idea since a long time. And after the crisis, we need to pursue the Green Deal objectives with even more impetus than before. And for this, the EU has provided an unprecedented package. So we have the 7-year budget, the MFF, with 1.1 trillion euros that is over 100 billion euros more than the last 7-year budget. So this is a good sign, I have to say. And the Next Generation EU program, which is specifically designed to counter the effects of COVID-19, worth 750 billion euros. And the centerpiece of the targeted COVID-19 recovery plan is the Recovery and Resilience Facility, RRF, which provides a big amount of money, 672.5 billion euros to the member states. So a lot of money, and we have to be very careful how to spend that, of course. And as part of the European solidarity in this crisis, almost half of the RRF will be paid in direct grant to the member states, and the other half will be provided by loans. And the loans will have long maturities and the favorable interest rates that the combined market power of the Union enjoys. And therefore, member states that face higher borrowing costs are likely to benefit from these lower interest rates. So this is actually what we think, and that's a very interesting aspect, of course. And the negotiations at EU level just finished last Friday, and we have reached a good provisional agreement that will now be voted in the Parliament and the Council. And as you might all know, Ernest Urtasun, my dear Green colleague, Catalan as well, negotiator on the RRF for the Econ Committee, and we all work closely together. And that's it was a very exciting process and very challenging for us, but also a real chance to put some green issues here on the table. And the RRF will help mitigate the economic and social impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Another aspect of the RRF is also truly groundbreaking. For the first time, the EU will take up their own funding on the capital markets via European bonds. And we all know there was a huge discussion about it, right? And it's really something that is new. And what's more, thanks to the efforts of the European Parliament and the Greens, in particular, the RRF will make European economies and societies more sustainable, resilient, and better prepared for the challenges and opportunities of green change, green and digital transition. So something that we have in our minds as a goal since a long time, right? And now we had the chance to put that on the table again. And at least 37% of the funding must go into projects fighting the climate catastrophe and could include initiatives such as green hydrogen systems or funding for renewable energy. So of course, our green perspective was to have a much higher percentage, 50%, for example, but we can really say that when you look at the negotiation level, that this is a success. Additionally, at least 20% of the funding of the RRF will go into projects enhancing the digital transformation. And all investments and reforms of RRF must respect the do no significant harm principle, ensuring that they do not significantly harm the environment. So here again, we have the climate and the environment aspect that is very important, but also all the benefit for the people that this fund will have. And under the provisional agreement on the RRF, there will be an essential governance role for the European Parliament. During regular recovery and resilience dialogues, we will scrutinize the Commission on issues related to the RRF. And when the RRF regulation is in force, member states can provide their recovery and resilience plans to the European Commission. The Commission assesses these plans, and after Council approval, the funding is provided. So these are the technical aspects. And we also agreed on a measure to help quick and smooth financing of the projects. 13% of the total amount allocated to each member state will be made available in pre-financing upon the approval of recovery and resilience plans to ensure that the money starts flowing as soon as possible and to support a green and digital recovery as soon as possible is a very important aspect. As we all know, we don't have the time that it is waited too long for that support. And another crucial part of the support to the green transition offered by the EU is the Just Transition Mechanism. And this GTM will provide targeted financial support in the form of loans and grants, particularly to regions, industries, and workers who have faced a double challenge. So the current short-term economic downturn challenge caused by COVID, and the medium and long-term challenge of transition to a clean economy. A transition which is more difficult, of course, than in other areas of Europe because the starting point is behind. And among these regions, there are the Spanish areas, for example, where 14 coal power plants are still located. And the mechanism will mobilize 150 billion euro investments through 3 pillars. And we have just agreed on the first one, the so-called Just Transition Fund. And I was part of the negotiation team for the Just Transition Fund as responsible MEP in the Industry and Economy Affairs Committee, but also as rapporteur in the Econ Committee. So I was really very much into this topic and was still dreaming in the night of the Just Transition Fund and how we can support the people during the transformation process in the best way. And we came to a really good result here. The fund will provide 70.5 billion euros from 2021 to 2027. We in the Parliament, we hoped for even more money than that, but this is the result we have now. It is estimated that out of these 70.5 billion euros, 800 million euros should be allocated to Spain, particularly for the coal regions of Asturias, León, Palencia, Cádiz, A Coruña, Cordoba, Almeria, and Teruel. I hope I was pronouncing it somehow in a way that it was understandable. And regional and national authorities will develop plans showing how their regions are particularly affected by the ecological transition, how they want to diversify their economy to contribute to the EU climate targets, and which support they need from this fund. And the fund will then support particularly investments in startups and SMEs to strengthen and diversify the economy of the regions most affected by the transition to a fossil-free system. And I can tell you from the negotiations, for example, that the job perspective we have here was somehow not self-evident during the negotiation process, but I think that was a very important part and a very green aspect we put on the table here, and I'm very, very glad that is really implemented in the Just Transition Mechanism or Just Transition Fund. And the fund will also finance social infrastructure and inclusion, for example, job search assistance, upskilling and reskilling projects. And we Greens fought successfully to keep investments in all fossil fuels out of the scope of the fund. And that was a real success, I can tell you, because it wasn't the case at the beginning of our negotiation that we had in mind that this could happen, but it did. And that's very, very important because I think every single euro spent in fossil fuels is a stranded asset, right? So this is what we think. And if we want to achieve the Paris climate goals, that's something we really have to have in mind. No stranded assets, no investments in gas as bridging technology. Moreover, we were able to secure investments in green mobility, district heating networks, clean energy, and energy efficiency. And as we take the economy out of the crisis, we really need to seize the opportunity that we're injecting a lot of public money into the industry to transform it, right? I mean, when we spend now on the industry level money, then we can take the chance, right, to use that money for green transformation because we are already in that transformation process, right? And then we have to spend it in the best way we can. We should set increasingly ambitious transparency, environmental and social standards for value chains. That's very important. We should provide massive local tailor-made support for the transition to SMEs. And we should also accompany the transition of workers, particularly with upskilling and reskilling programs. What is very important as well, we should provide targeted support to the industries with emissions whose elimination requires massive investments in new technologies. So, for example, steel, cement, and chemicals. That's the industrial perspective, of course. We should make industries pay the price of their emissions, right? It's not the taxpayers, it's the industries who should pay the price. Stop handing out free permits to pollute. And at the same time, we should create a level playing field with foreign companies importing their products into Europe. So we are currently working on a carbon price at the EU borders to achieve that. And we should also massively invest in renewable energies and energy efficiency, which creates up to 7 times more jobs than fossil fuels and help us reach climate neutrality. So once again, renewable energies is a job booster, right, in Europe in general. And that is something which is a chance we really have to take up. And we should also have a strategic approach to key value chains. So don't let innovation and the technologies we need in the future go to China, right? We should do that in Europe, you know, to use and to invent the new technology, as it happened with solar PV, for example, in China, relevant for Spain as well, right? Because you had a strong PV industry some years ago, and so if we have all the capacity and expertise here in Europe, we should really use it. And we should also create demand for sustainable offers by improving information to consumers about how long-lasting and repairable the products they buy are, for instance. And just as a last aspect to tell you a little the impact of the EU recovery measures and climate ambitions in my home region, Bavaria. So when we discuss all these aspects I just mentioned, you know, with companies, I have lots of discussions who warn against over-regulation, or they say that the targets of the EU, like climate neutrality, are over-ambitious and cannot be achieved. And we always have to show a little and discuss that there are indeed ways to achieve it, but it's also a chance to do that for a long-term perspective, and that it's a view from the economic perspective, a good thing to do. But there are also a lot of companies from all industries, including automotive and chemical, that embrace the chance and they really want to change that. And we are in close discussions to work on that. And that there are companies that have recognized that green transition is coming, and that will use the EU funding to accelerate the change. So this is a little you know, an introduction to the field. I'm really looking forward to the discussion, what it means for you in Spain, because we all know, of course, in Brussels, and when we talk and discuss all these legislative files in the Parliament, that at the very end, it counts what it means for the people in the regions, right, in the European countries. And I think with all what we work on, we really want to support the people in Europe. We want to support the process to achieve the climate goals and to have a resilient economy with jobs and perspectives for the people. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion, and thank you very much again for the chance to talk to you today and to discuss that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your intervention. Very interesting. Javier, you now have the floor. Hello. Can you all hear me well? Yes? Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for having been invited, for allowing me to share my reflections, my considerations, something that I've been able to work with my union shortly. We followed an initiative with the School of Work Trends Commissions together with Joan Cusco-Viela. And I used the conclusions of this work, of this workshop, considering the European recovery funds, to be able to share with you a presentation that could support my words, and I will share it with you in order to make my presentation. Now, I would like to first make a first consideration. Can you all see my screen? Yes. Well, the first consideration I would like to make with all of you is, well, the conclusion we have in our union response policies to the pandemic that the European Union are making means a big turn, a big shift in both the Commission and the European Parliament. This Copernicus turn is leading us towards the possibility of establishing mechanism of fiscal unity that can help us build a new political space beyond the economic space. This is what we had till now in the European Union. In that respect, the building of this new political scenario in the European Union is a very important opportunity to build this social Europe that we have longed from the European Unionism and from the European Confederation of Unions, and well, also from our Catalan and Spanish union movement. We are not just facing something else. We believe it's a very important moment that can be key for the future. If you look at this first slide, you will see that considering some of the areas close to Comisiones Obreras and that have to do with the government of Spain in the Moncloa Palace, the first thing that I would like to share with you with respect to what Europe needs and what Spain and Catalonia need as well, and what is really happening, I would like to start by speaking about the needs that we are observing as a first consideration about the current situation of our pandemic, of our crisis, and what we need to do to give an answer to it. If you take a look at this first list of investment, recapitalization, trying to find a new entrepreneurial framework that has the right tone, leading us to the economic recuperation, the new investments that will lead us to a new, more sustainable economic model, a more digitalized model, and the recuperation of all the member states in their public funds, considering the support they had to give to their people, to their citizens when facing the crisis. Well, we believe we are speaking about a current scenario of a pandemic impact of approximately 4.4 billion euro. We need an economic injection that can be discussed, but just for you to have an idea, this is the hole that the pandemic has left. Something that well, we needed to consider, and well, this is leaving a blank in our pandemic context. Really, the economic response of the European Union has not covered the 4.4 billion euros. However, the European answer has offered several support lines offered to the member states: protection of job creations and the healthcare support, the support of an economic model change, and a productive model in the European Union. And what is their bet for the year 2027? It's been an answer of 2.3 billion euros, not 4.4. That's what we needed. But if we compare this to what we had with the answer given by the European Union in our last crisis in the year 2008, this is a radical change. More Keynesian, more interventionistic of economy that open a new space of opportunity that we believe will be very, very important. And well, we have a specific element, an element that we'll be covering today in today's session. That is the bet for the European Union, what we had to bet on through a clear investment in that respect with 770,000 million euro. This is the recuperation and transformation funds. This means a new generation for the European Union. And this offers a new opportunity for our country to help us come out of the weaknesses of an economic model after the after a very important advance of what the secondary was, a more industrialized sector, something that is giving a support, a buffer to face different economic cycles, mainly the negative economic cycles that has proved in other countries. For example, Germany, as you can see, there's been a response to the crisis with the industrialized economy. This has been different from what's happened in Spain and Catalonia, connected to a real estate speculatory model that was used incorrectly, we believe. This injection, this connection of efforts meant an important change with a line of action that the European Union is oriented, as far as we are concerned, as far as the unionists are concerned, in a very well vertebrated axis that are key to be able to develop a new productive model. The first thing that we have to consider is that any proposal we can share today here on this panel is full of uncertainties in the development and in the governance as well. In the European Union, we have mechanisms to plan and to deliver, evaluate, and carry out transparently the resources that have been agreed upon. But when we go down to the member states, like in Spain, we do not clearly know what is the level of governance and resources to be able to offer a new participation, both public and private, that leads the European Union develop new projects of rebuilding the economic model. What is the first stage that we have to be observing? Well, the Spanish government that will lead us to the European Union. Let me quickly explain these four participatory elements, the different stages of development from the Spanish government's perspective. At the end of March, beginning of April, could be ready to follow the first requirement of the European Union, which has to do with the planning of projects that have to be undertaken in order to start the evaluation of management to be these economic transfers. What are the challenges that we can see as a country with respect to the usage of these funds? Well, the first thing that we have to understand to face the challenges is that we are starting from weaknesses, and we have a model of governance that we have to try to clarify. The weaknesses obviously mean that we have a current economic tissue which is highly atomized with small and very small companies. Our economic basis is micro companies. It's highly capitalized by transversal policies that can give us support from the European Union, has a small culture of cooperation between or inside the different value chain in Europe. We cannot just help these transversal policies. We do not even have the culture or an area of institutional cooperation territorially with the federal government amongst the different autonomous communities. I'm speaking about the solidarity member with a high responsibility, understanding that we need cooperation spaces when we speak about digitalization, when we speak about the green transition. We have to understand that there is an important model that can go beyond borders, internal borders, in the aspect of regional spheres. We start from the territorial imbalance, which is latent, a territory that's metropolitan territory, which is powerful in the different cores, in the different capitals of some of the territorial areas. But we are also starting from Catalonia and Spain, empty from the depopulated Catalonia. We don't need to go to Soria or other parts of Spain. The emptiest Spain. We can check the second area. of the second area of emptiness in Spain, which is the province of Lleida in Catalonia, and there we can find many examples of this model. We do not have a strong model there. We don't have a strong investment in research and development, and we have a labor market that is the fruit of the last crisis, where we have a highly precarious gender gaps. And well, we don't have the capacity to support itself. We have to intervene in the upskilling of competences to face the challenges of these construction funds. These are the main weaknesses. But the model of governance obviously exists in the political difficulties of a structure of a country that has not done or that has not followed or has not walked the walk of this new model of federalization of the autonomous regions to try to strengthen the governance models that can allow us to capitalize any model of investment in the territory of the Iberian Peninsula. We have a lack of culture. Even in the last months, this has been an area of protagonism. We are evaluating exceptionally a possibility to learn a new culture. Some people think that the Spanish government is reaching agreements with support for help, the support and help to companies, funding and help to freelance workers, thinking that this is an answer to the crisis. It's because the concept of exceptionality is telling us that we do not have a deeply rooted culture of a model of agreement. Therefore, we will have difficulties to be able to articulate the capitalization of all the resources that we had to give and that come from this European projection. And then evidently, we do not have the culture, because if we take a look at the capacity of action of all the European funds that we have had till now to develop the new investments, the percentage of work capacity, considering what is being asked to Europe and what is being done in Spain, well, we don't reach 50% of the capacity of our level of action. It's a lack of planning, a lack of management capacity in that respect. These are the challenges that we have to overcome in order to face this injection that we have in very near our hands. These funds have two different stages. A first stage till the year 2023, and a second stage from 2024 to 2025. The first stage, 2021 to 2023, to make the long story short, the Spanish government defined what will be the different options that will be used for the funds. These funds, out of the 140,000 million that we will receive, half of them will be transparently given, and the other will be funding. Spain determined from the very beginning, this first stage is to use the transparency fund, the first 70,000 million euros. From the 21st to the 2030, at the year 2021, we have budgeted 26,000 million euros. Therefore, we have a certain level of condition. We are conditioned so that before we cover the different projects, we know what the resources will be. Let me also explain something else when I try to clarify my presentation. What are the transversal axes that we have to observe? Well, we have four elements. Each person will have to determine his or her objectives. In our union, we have these four blocks of consideration. These are the cross-sectional axes. They are not so important, but we are observing that the same is what is the playing ground we have. A playing field that is determined by the European Union with some access of investment, and that Spain developed with 10 leverage policies and 30 lines of action that have the four central axes of this consideration. In that respect, we have four axes that, determine, as far as we're concerned, the specific policies with respect to all that has to do with the concept of green transition, mobility, and energy transfer and change. All that has to do with fostering energy and supporting renewable energy, something that even if we have very important geographical and natural elements are not leading this trend, developing the renewable energies, but also the concept of use and processing of these energies. We should break the oligopolies that master this reality. We should get closer to our territory and to our reality, the oligopolic trends, and we have to start speaking about concepts of democratization in all the areas of economy, but also of energy as a consumption element that requires the role play of other local communities. Mobility is very important. We try to support public transport structures, and we want to understand that there is an area for transformation and change. We are a union. We have high interests, such as the defense of the rights of our workers, but also of a social model. So we want to have these concepts deeply rooted in these policies. Another fundamental axis, which is the road towards digitalization. Well, we know that we in our country want to improve competences, digital competences. We have to reach to the micro and very micro companies. Our positioning here is to be able to develop digitalizations of public administrations in a very careful way. Here we have a model of a democratic model, the digitalization of public administrations right now, those that are presenting some new laws in our country. For example, a new law in Catalonia about this is changing the model of the democratic relations because it breaks from the areas of intermediation of society. It's adding another element between citizens or the legal basis and companies, but you don't have collective groups of the physical areas because we don't understand the concept of the digitalization of the public administration. Well, there's a role to be played between the economic agents, civil society, institutions, etc. So let's be careful because we are placing our model of democracy at stake. This is a brief parenthesis in that respect. As I said before, we have to be able to give the right tools to the rural Catalonia while supporting people that are affected by this transformation process, and a regulatory framework that should follow all this. The pandemic is a key element, strengthening the public resources to offer the right care to the social and healthcare actions. We have to go towards direct actions. Well, healthcare for the elderly is very important. It means that the current model is causing thousands of dead people because of the virus. We have a very important challenge that goes through a reform that requires a modification of the basic social laws and a modification of the home care models. And these elements should be, should also include resources in order not to institutionalize the relation with users, so that they have to end up paying for the resources or not, or lack of them that we have until now. And finally, another access that the European Union is presenting has to do with the digital education and all the elements that we have to understand as an opportunity to improve competences in that concept of training forever, while integrating different models of training and education, training that is continuous vocational training for the unemployed, and also to give a possibility to digitalization. Let me also say that we have the possibility and the capacity to once and for all have a model from 0 to 3 years of child education, something that has enough resources to implement it all with a great success. And we need a model that Spain is presenting that we understand is the key, which are these strategic projects of rebuilding an economic economy. Well, the third decree that the government poses or consider are three different possibilities of collaboration between companies and public companies and private companies. Government wants to have 51% of this capacity of intervention in order to have a strong public initiative on the orientation of this project of investment. And this will be the end of the specificity of these criteria of these entrepreneurial projects. And we would like to intervene in the access that we have considered till now. Let me finish. I'm sorry for speaking to you with all that passion, but we have some risks that are an opportunity. The big project, 26,000 billion, that you have to remember in the back of your heads, well, includes the risks of turning this into a reality as quickly as possible, because we will need the transfer of the 26,000. Well, there's little time for the planning, for the management, and from the real thing to receive. This will be doing through the big or very big companies. This may favor the opportunity. This may favor the actions of some oligopolies to determine what are doing some of the infrastructure or energy companies or real estate companies, and maybe they join the effort to get some dividends while maintaining their oligopolistic attitude. So here we have a risk of feeding the beast with the resources of the European Union. The other element is that with this criteria, we may not reach SMEs or micro companies. As I said before, 90-something% of the companies in our country, the companies in our country are smaller, very small companies. If we leave it in the hands of companies, we won't be able to fill up the gaps of the empty Spain, as I said before. So we have risks. We have the risk of the capitality of Madrid, because they act as a vacuum cleaner, because they are supporting and they are receiving all the benefits. And finally, we have a governance model to be able to act and react. If we do everything from the management point of central Spain without giving a capacity of reaction to the local administrations and to each one of the regional governments, we'll be building a model that should be decentralized with a different and plural Spain in their national economic sense that should be understood. And I am sorry, I know that this is a long story, but I thought it was very important to share all this with everyone. If we manage all this, I will have very, very big opportunities and yield very, very big results. Thank you. Thank you, Javier. Very interesting, very dense, and very training oriented. Laura, your turn. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for having invited our municipality, represented by the mayor of Montcada, Reixac, a municipality that is being greatly affected by the industrial crisis. Let me quickly and briefly explain the following. Montcada, Reixac is a municipality with 36,000 inhabitants in the metropolitan area of Barcelona, next to Barcelona, and it is a city with a long-standing industrial tradition. We have 10 polygons of economic activity, 100% of occupation in all the cases, but well, in less than 1 square kilometer, in only 3 streets away from us, we've had the dismissal of many workers of General Cables, Nissan, that will be working in the December 31st of December 2021. But if we consider San Andreu de la Barca plant, Zona Franca plant, and Moncada plant, this will be affecting 3,000 workers. And IT connectivity, that last year had to regulate their staff amounts, that was going to affect 104 people. It ended up being only 94 people, but this year they announced their attempt to close the company and therefore to dismiss the 248 workers that still were working in the company. So it's a real social and industrial drama what we are living in our municipality. Everything has some points in common. They respond to the organization of big multinational companies that relocate and their offshore production areas. And second point in common is that there is no economic justification for the closing of these companies, because these companies were not negatively affected. Well, right now we are in the time of reindustrialization. It's also true that a certain degree of economic activity is being recuperated, but we're not reindustrializing. Nearly all the proposals that are arriving have to do with logistics. And in Montcada Reixac, we do not want logistics. We have a long-standing tradition in the history of automotive industry with Motor Ibérica, the emblematic company, and we want an added value. But this is not exclusive to Montcada Reixac. It's affecting the ensemble of Catalonia. It's not only linked to the crisis having to do with the pandemic. This comes from the strategy of return to the matrix of these companies that were set up in Catalonia, and because the low salaries competitive advantage was lost. And in spite of all these difficulties, Catalonia is still one of the most heavily industrialized territories of the country, but with an energy model that greatly depends on fossil fuels and nuclear energy, a commercial sector which is not very competitive, with an aged administration, and with a social protection model that does not have the capacity to revert the inequalities, which is also a burden for economy in the production sectors that are not connected to research and technological innovation, with vocational training that is very weak and a huge dependency on the international markets. For all this, I believe that the recuperation funds in Europe are a huge opportunity. These recovery funds will help Catalonia to support a change in the production model, not losing the wagon of energy and digital transition. And this is an opportunity that we cannot miss by any means. We have to learn from the historical lessons, and also for our future lessons, in order to learn from our mistakes. I would like to determine and pose 6 criteria that should be considered when choosing these projects. The first one is that we have to invest in productive economy and in meaningful structures, sustainable mobility to decarbonize our economy, for example. A good part of the European funds of the 1990s and the year 2000 were aimed at infrastructures with little sense, like high-speed train. The populations that will use the train to go to work, etc. But policies prioritized AVE, which is this train, as compared to regular transportation. 95% of the transportation means that is used by 95% of the population. And allow me now to reivindicate in these projects the project of the underground R2 train line towards Moncada, because beyond changing our urban meshwork, beyond avoiding the death of so many people, this is going to be of great help, because we will have an extra train line. So this is supporting sustainable mobility, strengthening infrastructure for public transportation, and also for the transportation of goods and foods, supporting sustainable mobility, and giving a support to the electric vehicles. All models that are connected to electric mobility, from the manufacturing going through batteries and the rest of components. We need to transform the economic model on policies based on the new Green Deal, prioritizing those transforming projects that in order to support energy transition and digital transition, something that is fair to everyone, and we should prioritize those projects of green industrialization that will allow us to create more jobs. In a nutshell, projects should have climate goals that are clear in order to decarbonize our economy and to be coherent with goals and preserving the natural environment. We shouldn't have projects that are supported on fossil fuels. Well, also public leadership is the second element. The big companies, depending on their needs, to undertake certain actions. All these things have been changed. We have to use industrial policies right in the center of the public agenda so that administrations can plan, lead, and fiscalize their different actions. So we're speaking about public-private collaboration. Yes, not to make a public funds be transferred, increasing in order to increase the benefits of big companies. It should have real effects that benefit the workers of all our region, of our country. And while speaking about the public sector, well, in order to manage these funds, we will modernize the economy and other economies that are stronger with more staff and working in better labor conditions. The third criteria is that we need a traditionally good model in our industrial sector. Industrial policies were based on facilitating the right conditions to right cheap labor force with a weak fiscality in order to attract foreign investments who were not really committed with our country. Not in Spain or in Catalonia, we have an industrial or public sector or a public banking sector that supports our needs, like in France, Germany, or other countries in Europe. When an administration offers money to a company, they should also be able to participate in the decision making. This public money should our condition, for example, so that we don't find situations where once these companies generate benefits, well, these companies end up hiring an offshore service somewhere else, something that we lived in Montcada, Reixac. The fourth criteria, we cannot only benefit big companies. As Javier Pacheco said, Catalonia is a country of SMEs with 2 out of every 3 jobs created by these companies. There is a piece of information from the mayor of Barcelona where they announced the fund of 20,000 million euro to help SMEs overcome this crisis, fulfilling 3 of the criteria that we said before: the leadership of administrations, the participation of both public and private partnership, and the participation of SMEs. And also, it's also a good example on how the public sector can contribute to maintain industry and the activities we have had till now. The fifth criteria, well, this support requires also the feminist support. We should also have an important set of actions creating good jobs and to guarantee the participation of women, not only in the decision making, but also in the execution of these projects. The other day, I heard that there is an SME project of renewable energies, solar panels, elements that are compatible with the training of installers. We need new professionals. This well, most people in the sector should be also women. We need to rebuild our industry with a feminist support. And the sixth criteria, well, industrial policies have to go hand by hand with educational and social policies in order to have a real impact, a real transforming impact. We cannot reproduce the model of precariousness and labor poverty while maintaining what we have had till now. And let me finish with an issue which is very important for the municipal movement. We need a federal and municipalistic governance of European funds. The government of Spain allowed the autonomous regions to have a level of participation of up to 50%, but we need also municipalities to participate in the decision making. Well, these funds are very important so that not only governments and expert commissions decide. We need to have the agreement of social agents. We need a deep debate of society, and we need the participation of city councils, because we are the real experts, the real field experts of our companies, of our industries, of society, of our infrastructures, in a nutshell, of reality. And we have a lot to say, a lot to contribute in the rebuilding, the green rebuilding and social rebuilding. Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura. With your intervention, we finish the participation of all the speakers. Let me convey to you some of the questions that came to us. There is a question which is quite generic. That is not connected to the European recovery funds, but since we are speaking about the productive model, this question may make sense in this meeting. If we are changing our production model, will this have an influence? Will this help? Or these are two different debates with respect to the reduction of our labor week down to 4 days instead of 5. This is, well, the productive or production model means many things. How are we structuring our work schedule is one of very many elements of our equation. Do you see any connection? You don't? Two things in parallel. Should be these elements connected? This is the first question. And there are also some questions related to what you said. And I'm speaking about who will finally manage, at least in Spain, who will finally manage the end of these funds. We heard Javier saying the public-private partnership, this new design of public-private partnership with the pros and with the cons. Evidently, we have to have the two actors collaborating under the sun, but the access to these funds may become a black box. So the management of these funds will not be easy, because there is a big interest and well, there's a conflict of interests, so that this money go somewhere or somewhere else. So maybe in this first round of questions, you could give us brief answers. Any consideration may be valid, considering what all speakers said. Maybe we should follow the same order of intervention. Maybe Henrike, you can start with your contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very interesting aspects I just heard. I really appreciate it. And of course, I could add something to your first question, because this is the level of my work or expertise. And so you were talking about the change of production model and the implications, right, for the jobs and the people. And I think, of course, you know, when we think about the Spanish situation with the closure of the coal mines and the ongoing decommissioning of the coal-fired power plants, Spain has engaged in an ambitious decarbonization strategy of its energy production. And of course, there's no question about it. The transition comes with significant social and economic consequences in the concerned areas, that's for sure. And of course, a temporary increase of the energy dependence of the country. And this is something that has to be handled, of course. And when we just look at the figures, the coal mining sector has lost more than 8,000 jobs since 2008, mostly in areas like Asturias, Teruel, Leon, Palencia. And at the end of 2018, 14 coal-fired power plants were operating in Spain. and one with an installed capacity of around 2,000 megawatts. So around 3,300 people were working in the operation and maintenance of these power plants, while 10,000 indirect jobs would be concerned by the closure of the coal mines and of the coal-fired power plants. So of course we have figures and clear, and destinies of people are linked to that. And the Spanish government has prepared a just transition strategy. We just heard the details about that. Thank you very much for that, Javier, and adopted urgent mitigation measures. But further action is necessary to face, of course, the social consequences in the area concerned. And as you were saying before, you were talking about the vacuum cleaner, right, for special areas. And when most of these areas are confronted with depopulation and limited economic activities, which amplify the negative consequences of the decarbonization process. So in order to tackle these challenges, high priority investment needs to be identified for diversifying and making the regional economy more modern and competitive, right? I mean, not only that you not only focus on special areas, but that you really focus on other regions as well in a just and fair way, of course. And I think this is something that has to be taken into account. And I can only tell you, like from the European level, when we work on the legislative amendments and everything, we somehow try to be as specific as possible to be when we think about how to spend the money, to support and to implement these measurements in a just way that everyone can profit in the various regions. And on the other hand, we can't be too restrictive because it has to be applied to all kind of regions in Europe, who are so not comparable sometimes, right? When you look at the conditions you have in the various regions, so we somehow try to find the middle of it. But of course, you were just spelling out the difficulties and also, how to handle the money in the regions and how it is spent the best way and in an efficient manner. So I agree on that, and I can really follow your arguments. That is still a lot to do there. And thank you very much also for your precious thoughts, learning from that perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Javier. You have the floor. I believe that the two references are very clear. First of all, I believe that the access presented by the European Union, these recovery funds, something that we have observed in the unionist work, the labor market, is the reflection of the situation in each country. Well, the labor contract that workers have has to do with what our economic reality is, not what we would like to have. We have a reality to be able to develop a job. If other companies are service work companies, no matter how much we train our workers, no matter how much we want to regulate things in industry, we won't see the reality reflected in the situation. So this means new labor conditions. We will have to use a new model depending on the power of the work done by companies. Having said this, why am I saying that the axes are well oriented? Well, because I reckon that two fundamental vectors of systemic transformation that are being generated with respect to the struggle against climate change and digitalization in a wide sense changes the paradigm of what the transformation and changes are placing them from one disruptive process of transformation in different names in the three industrial revolutions that we had historically till now, down to a continuous transformation process that we will be continuously living. We just have to look at in data management, in information management, etc. We practically, when we are accepting the concepts of a new model, well, things are changing, and We are being given new learning areas to develop tools that change ways of consumption, ways of working, ways of distributing, etc. Therefore, let's think that from now on, transformation will be probably a more ongoing. And well, training is a key element. It's so important to have a job to people and also to give them the tools to develop their job. It's important to have a labor place, a real physical place. They require the skill building so that they can join all the transformations that may occur in their job. So this new concept of education, of training, is part of the three axes. And the fourth axis, that is a fundamental one, has a lot to do with reduction of the work schedule, is the value or how to give a different value to care to ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves, not just spend the time working our lives. So reducing our or reconceptualize or reorganize our life and our working times. And we have to live these realities. We have to be trained. We have to take care of ourselves differently. We have to develop a labor relationship differently to be able to distribute work. We have to reconceptualize things of our jobs. I think that requantify our work schedule will be a short-lived approach. 4 days a week will be a short-lived approach because it's not considering this new model of relation between life and work, between private family life and labor life. Because, as Laura said, a fundamental factor of transversal principles, which is the character of gender, would be an impossible thing to implement. To feminize a society for the sake of it is something difficult. We will never reach the level of progress that we want to have to conquer the real equal rights. Also, the second question, the end goal of funds. Well, we have the capacity of governance on the one hand, because we are greatly concerned about this question mark, how to manage this reality. We have a government that is conditioned by Europe, a model that the member states are responsible for justifying, for giving the justification of what the realities are. So this conditions a verticality of the management of the funds. Each member state has a vertical capacity to articulate the funds. This means that with the lack of culture and federal cooperation we have in our country, as Laura said when she was saying that we should have a greater federality to allow the participation of local administrations, well, this means that we have a problem in the management of funds. For example, opening a new window to gather all the entrepreneurial private projects that are on the table. Right now, we have 540 projects, as if we were talking about an auction that we have in a lottery, to see if the state will take one project or the other. The more we have, the more projects we have, the more projects that the governments will have the capacity to act on. We cannot allow the government of Generalitat, of the government of Catalonia, that this is a management model that intends to gather from private partners information to give them the right subventions to solve their problems. Well, this is a very complex concept. Where is the dichotomy to determine the balance between the verticality that this conditional relation member state and the European Union and the real participation when the autonomous regions are lacking the real criteria to be able to act directly in this reality? That's, as I said before, we have an important risk. We run an important risk. The state government, pressured by the reception of these 26,000 million from Europe, well, determines who is going to get what and how much for each one of these big oligopolic international companies. Some economic families will continue managing the interests of the economy and the industrial reality. Social entities and the left wing has to fight against this. We have an opportunity. We have a left-wing coalition government. We have to ask them to democratize the participation in these funds and to federalize their intervention capacity. Thank you. Laura. After the explanation and Master Pacheco, mainly with the first question, the change of the productive model and the impact this could have on 4 days a week work schedule. Maybe we should ask or should add an element, who should manage the funds? And I'm sorry to insist on the same thing, because I'm speaking about my municipality, but we have a real need in municipalities to have a co-governance, not only for the management. Don't forget that with the recuperation and transformation and resilience plan we have, one of the 7 leverages has to do with the tractor projects. I'm sure that Javier Pacheco could tell us more about it. Added value projects that have an impact on either in 2 or more autonomous regions. One should be a multinational, but the other should be SMEs with an investment project of some 40 million euro. But when we speak about the need and importance of the involvement of municipalities in the management of all this, because, you know, this tractor, as we call them, tractor projects, have a local impact, because, you know, it's a small scale project, but we also have projects that have a much bigger, I'm sorry, a much smaller, much more local, and they are addressed to sustainable mobility, healthcare, the refurbishing, food sovereignty, which includes SMEs and bigger companies. That's why I say that this is important to manage things from Catalonia, not only from the government of Catalonia, but also from the hands of social agents and municipalities, city councils that determine a lot and have a lot to say in this sector, because we have the real knowledge, the field knowledge. Well, thank you so much. I would like to use this opportunity that we have Henrike Hahn to ask her a specific question. I'm speaking about the position of the Greens that we know. Obviously, we are green because we are part of the green movement, and it's true that we have a vision from the south of vision, but we share the scheme, the general frame of knowledge. But considering that you're here, Henrike, I would like to ask you to make a brief approach on whether this debate in Germany, the green debate in Germany, has reached a common position, or you've had the differences, because here maybe we have a more global vision. We don't get the nuances or not even that of what happens inside Germany. What you've talked about the European funds, and I'm speaking about the importance of Germany when defining European policies, because Germany has a specific heavy weight in Europe. You as Greens, have you had internal debates or not? Have you had an easy agreement? What is the position? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Mark, for this very interesting question. Of course, as you know, next year we will have elections in Germany. So we will have the German Parliament will be elected, and At the moment, Greens are strong, we have to say. So of course, it might be the case, you never know, because it's always a present of the voters, right? If you have the chance to do that, it might be the case that the Greens might be part of the government the next time. And this is a consequence because the Greens are getting stronger and stronger, because actual people implement the perspective of climate and environment protection and the necessity. And of course, we have the Fridays for Future movement that plays an important role, but even more people than ever take into account the environmental and climate aspects. And at the moment, at the European level, we have the German EU presidency. And of course, we all were confronted with the COVID challenges. So it weakened a little a presidency in itself, because, the the bargain processes didn't take place in the same way. But on the other hand, you could also, measure somehow if if the German government really takes into account the Green Deal perspective or not. For example, if you focus on the climate law, right? If it's ambitious or not. On the European level, we were ambitious than ever before. It's the reduction, like 60% we have at the moment, we demand is for the first time something that is the biggest, demand we ever had in European institutions. But on the other hand, the scientists say we need 65% of reduction target. And the German government is still far behind. And people, even from, 60% and 65%, and also, when you look at the current government, they don't follow that line, but the youth and so many people in Germany have, really in mind that we want to achieve the Paris climate goals, and they don't understand the current government at the moment with this kind of approach. And you also, when you talk to business leaders, for example, and industry leaders, right? There are so many ways to implement green transition, but it has to go hand in hand with political solutions, right? So, and I think the Greens are at the moment pretty strong in that, making suggestions, having strong propositions and solutions in hand. We don't claim about, the crisis all over. We have solutions, and people, need solutions. We all need that, right? And so this makes the Greens pretty strong at the moment, I think, and we will also continue that work. We would hope that it would be even more stronger, the green approach in the European Parliament. We had from von der Leyen that strong demand for the Green Deal, but we realize when we work in our committees on the legislative files, that is really important. Even the parties who should be behind, or the groups who should be behind von der Leyen, they are not necessarily right. If you fight for example, the exclusion of gas as bridging technology, you see in the voting behavior that the EPP, for example, is not following von der Leyen, right? But on the German government level, we can spell that out and say, hey, these are what we need. These are the demands we need. And of course, it's also a question of political communication, that we have to do that in a very clear way. I think that's an explanation, at least at the German strength or growing relevance of the Greens in the German context. And we hope for that, of course, in the European level to get even more stronger. And I think we all know in Europe now that we have to spend our money in, with regard to climate and environment aspects. And there is no other option than that, to do it in a really good way, right? And I'm pretty hopeful, like in Europe, in general, we have Greens getting stronger and stronger. And I hope that also we can spell that out next year. And the focus is like, we are not scared of finding solutions, we're not scared. COVID is a challenge at the moment, but we are also in the middle of a climate crisis, and we have the solutions, right, to do something. And, to do that with hope and with concrete measurements and with energy and confidence and trust. This is the core, I think, right? And so this way we can convince the people that we can achieve as much as we want, if we do that together. That's the point for me. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. I wanted to use this opportunity, the opportunity of having you here and seeing your comment, your reaction, which for us is extremely interesting. Thank you so much. I think that all the contributions, no matter how complex or straightforward, this is more. This has been a combination of a set of conversations and a masterclass. This is a goal we had in mind, and I trust that in a few months' time, Henrike will be part, or your group will be part of the government. I'm sure that you will make it. It's not that we have the closest relations between Germany and Spain, but the Greens have close relations, and you being in the government may help us in this north-south axis transition, a transition that will require lots of energy and lots of support to be able to go ahead, because the challenge in Europe is very, very big. We have difficulties, we have things to do, but as you said, I believe that we have the will to do things. We can reach beyond. Well, let me finish by saying that we'll continue next year with more dialogues and with more meetings. The European recovery funds have a huge impact. We will be paying close attention to all countries. Spain, this means that we are able to change certain weaknesses in our economic and industrial system where the challenges is huge. And I would like to wish you all evidently happy season holidays with a long social distance. I'm sorry. Well, it's normal to see each other through a screen, but I wish you a happy new year. And I also wish you a happy 2021. We'll keep you posted with the new activities that we will be organizing on January. Thank you all for your contributions. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.